I call Melissa Lee.
Manu e whelele mamau. And I think the second bit I actually said was birds that fly together go far, in view that this is actually Samoan Language Week. And it's a reflection of the National Caucus and how fantastic we actually flock together. We will go very far. And after that budget, we're guaranteed to go very far. So I have to talk slightly about react to the members opposite. My dear Barbara Stewart, my friend, she actually quoted her leader by saying, "I can see red, I can see red, I can see red." Apparently that's what he said. Darling, you have to have better memory. He actually said, I can see red. I thought he was talking about the fact that he wasn't colorblind, or that he can actually see, rather than about the budget. He didn't actually say, "I see red, I see red, I see red," as in the lyric that he was actually trying to connect to the split ends thing, and he was trying to make fun of the budget, some sort of a rhetoric. And I have to actually react to my dear friend Richard Prosser. Sir, you're a great mate, but the speed at which that you actually speak, sometimes I actually lose it. You're like a bullet so far, and I'm actually hoping that you actually said shiploads rather than something else. I'm hoping. Sir, from where the Labour Party is actually sitting, I'm sort of remembering that, people say, they say the grass is always greener on the other side. And for many New Zealanders for a very long time, Australia was in fact the greener pasture. The sun seems to shine a bit longer. I'm quoting from an article here, and the pay packets were a bit fatter, and they had koalas apparently. And I'm quoting, "But times are changing. The decline in long-term migration figures to Australia is just one example, and the reason is simple. Australia may have cuddly koalas, but New Zealand has John Key." And that apparently is in relation to how fantastic our Prime Minister and this government is actually doing. And it's about incremental, actually radical incrementalism that somebody actually mentioned to me. And what that is, it's actually not about, how, when people get sick, you actually, feed them medicine. We're saying we're not trying to force feed a medicine, we're actually sort of convincing them that they're sick and they actually want the certain kind of medicine. And this government is doing exactly that. We're actually giving them information about what this country needs and actually showing them the pathway that we actually want a better life. And having a economic growth is actually a good thing, sir. And this budget demonstrates National's clear commitment to economic growth and dedication to helping hard-working New Zealanders and the families to actually grow. And New Zealand is a small economy in global terms, so our population is a lot smaller than many countries, but our economic performance in recent years has been very, very strong, sir, ahead of many other nations that we can actually talk about. Earlier, a member opposite sort of talked about how, his community has been poor for a very, very long time. And it sort of struck me that why is it that, the member who's been a Labour MP for a very long time, and previous to the national government becoming the government in 2008, it was in fact a Labour government for 9 years, and yet that community was poor before then, and it is still poor now. Sometimes it's about people. This government is taking action that, the Labour government did not actually take action on. We're increasing benefits, and this government is actually spending $790 million over the next 4 years to help children living in some of New Zealand's poorest families to actually be slightly better off. I mean, as a nation, we're not the richest of nations. We cannot afford more than that. And we're actually saying we're giving families a helping hand. And this is the first time that a real benefit has been raised in 43 years. The previous Labour government never actually did that, sir. We're building more competitive and productive economy through a number of critical initiatives. Sir, I want to sort of talk a little bit about the way that this national government has contributed to education. And I know that my colleague, my learned colleague, Honourable Judith Collins, actually talked about the special education sector, where our select committee, Education and Science Select Committee, actually had a discussion. And I have to agree with Judith, Ms. Collins, that we have a very sort of friendly select committee where we actually work together very well indeed. And our discussions on dyslexia, dyspraxia, and Asperger's syndrome, and was really interesting for me because I didn't even know what dyspraxia was. I knew what dyslexia was, but dyspraxia was something that was a bit new to me. And apparently it's about ordering things. For example, I mean, this is for fun example. Superman wears his tights underwear over the tights. You could call him dyspraxia because he obviously did not put them in the right order. Underpants underneath the tights, I would have thought. I know I'm cracking jokes about something, but I shouldn't. But it's a disorder, and it's an ability to learn in a different way. And our teaching. Our teachers should be better equipped to help our children who actually have disorders, to actually help them learn better, so that they can actually cope in our education facilities. Like the new modern learning environments is actually a much better, way better than what it used to be when teachers used to sit us down when I was a child in Korea. 65 children in one class, two to each table in a row, and if you move, then the teacher will throw a chalk at you. Whereas the new modern learning environment is quite a different thing. A child who has attention deficit disorder cannot sit in a classroom for more than 50 minutes or 60 minutes, and they need to move around, but the teacher can actually cope with teaching kids who don't have these issues, but also can pay attention to those kids who do in fact have that in a modern learning environment, sir. So the budget, the education is particularly important to many ethnic communities, sir. I know that many, for example, the Korean community, basically move to a country like New Zealand because they want a better opportunity for their children. And what that means is that when they uproot their family to come to a country like New Zealand, they don't have the family connections or the support networks or potentially even a job, social networks. And often, because they don't have a job, they're often poorer than when they were in their home countries. And they do that because they want a better opportunity for their children, and education is something that is paramount in their minds. And I'm very proud that the budget 2015 invests an extra $686.7 million over the next 4 years in education, bringing our total investment to education to $10.8 billion next year. And I repeat, 10.8 billion, not million. This is a clear indication that reflects national determination and commitment to helping all young New Zealanders from all different ethnic backgrounds to achieve their brightest and fullest potential, sir. And that's where we are actually focused on when we actually talk about helping families who are the poorest and helping families with children who are beneficiaries with extra money. But we also have a commitment for them to have, be available for job, is because instead of living in a benefit-dependent home, when the parents are in fact working, whether and hopefully part-time, when the children are a lot younger, but I personally went back to work when my child was only 5 weeks old, and that was because choice. I had the opportunity to work. If I didn't work, my staff could not possibly be paid. I had more than a dozen staff members that I had to actually pay wages for. So I went back to work when my son was 5 weeks old. But I was lucky to work in an environment, television industry, where they were very forgiving of mothers who were actually working and having children around as well. So the budget 2015 delivered for New Zealand. And I think Labour and the opposition are just sore because they didn't think of it first.